Thank you for joining us for Wednesday's Elko Live here on KELK. We're going to jump right in because we have a county commission meeting this afternoon, and it starts with a board of fire commissioners and includes a health board meeting. And we have two of Elko's fine professionals in studio to talk about the agenda today, including our Commissioner John Karr and alongside our assistant county manager, that's Curtis Moore. So thank you, gentlemen, for being here and welcome.
Thanks for having us.
What are we professional at? I don't know. Anyway, sorry, Lori. I always got to give you a hard time.
I know, John. Thank you so much for coming on the program. I know you're actually filling in for your colleague for Delmo because he's healing after some surgery. He's told enough people, so I don't think it's a big deal. So, yeah, he's getting better. So, cool. So, let's go over the agenda.
We should have made him call in on pain meds. I agree.
Oh, jeez. I was going to scoot that up.
Okay.
No, Delmo is cheerful enough without the addition of any enhancements. So a cool thing will happen this afternoon right away. Elko Fire Protection Chief Matt Peterson is going to lead a badge pinning ceremony and give an update on the fire department. And I know you take a lot of pride in this department, John, in particular.
Oh, I just love the transformation. During the parades and all, you'll see some new equipment. And it's not to try to show off and brag that we, ooh, look at our shiny new penny. It's to go, no, we've finally got equipment that's worth running and we really can respond to fires in the county and the areas around that we have mutual agreements with. And you can feel that, no, somebody will show up if you have a problem. Before, with our old antiquated stuff, I don't think we could always say that.
Well, John, agreed. I mean, I saw that Renton fire truck in the Nevada Day Parade. It might have been in the Veterans Day Parade as well. My gosh, what a gorgeous piece of equipment. And there were several engines like that, but that really stands out.
And Matt's been fantastic of when we have to buy new, we'll buy new, but yet getting some refurbished ones that were good models to begin with. Because there's some bad models, just like any car, truck, anything that were just not worth right off the factory show, they weren't worth a darn. But no, getting some ones that are 5, 10, 15 years old that are still quality trucks that are low mileage and reusing them, repurposing them. So fiscally, no, I think he's been very responsible, but getting us a whole fleet that could actually respond to something when we need it.
And I see from the report he'll deliver this afternoon. The calls for service are up, and so they're managing to do that at the same time that they're also doing a lot of mitigation work, and that brings us to the badge pinning ceremony. He has 3 outstanding recruits, candidates, if you will, and I believe he'll explain, what the badge pinning is. Did you go through that when you were a volunteer, John?
I didn't, no.
I know I was given a badge before, and then I realized I don't need this. I don't want a badge. I'd rather just go out and fight fires. But I am really proud of Anthony Bauer, Genevieve Peterson, and Benjamin Bronstatter. They are employees with the Fire Protection District, and now they're going to actually have their firefighter badges, right?
There you go. Very proud of them in that. Working with NV Energy grants on fire mitigation stuff out around the cities, but around fire poles and those kind of things. No, it's exciting to see us proactive as opposed to reactive. I know the South's not overly excited about paying for it, but we weren't excited about paying for their school bills and taxing our gold mine. So I guess there you go.
That's only fair. And we know that these employees and others with the Fire Protection District, they're busy, as you said, year-round in fire and rescue and EMS, too. Many of them have some dual credentials.
And you actually see them out and about working. This is not... There's always the joke, the worker with standing on the shovel doing nothing, that, just the generic joke. No, these guys are out really accomplishing stuff, so it's good to see.
Yep, great. They do know how to use chainsaws. They have put them to work all year long, so cool. So moving on from there, from the fire, unless there's anything that jumps out on that agenda, I know there'll be some discussion of communications. It's not inexpensive, but it is a contract of about $330,000. It's actually through the state for Nevada IT.
Well, it's all on our upgrades. We're trying to do dispatch and the radios here. So, and we're actually finally had some very good conversations with the TV district on their towers and working together to not duplicate things and proceed as a team on what does this area need for communication services.
Hey, that's great news, John, because then you reduce those redundancies and it increases operability. Communication is really a detriment in these far-flung areas, and we are the most mountainous state in the United States. I don't know if you knew that, but it's hard to communicate with through all these mountaintops sometimes.
There you go.
So that's in the works then.
It is.
Good.
That's part of the dispatch going under the county, but then Matt and the sheriff's office, and even still working with the city on what do we need. And so I think it's been good on what do we need to do. And then looking at the TV district, they upped their property increment tax, and so we've been now working with them, going, well, wait a minute, what are your plans? And let's really rethink this before you guys go build a tower for whatever the example is. But let's see if we could use that same tower and make it slightly bigger and be able to have our stuff on it too, or whatever the agreement could be.
So, John, do you think most people noticed the increase in their tax increment on their property tax bill?
Probably not, because it's the only ones that saw a decrease were county, because they don't have the city tax. The Elko city took up 20 cents, but then Carlin, Wells, Wendover, all of them took 25 of the 75 cents that went away in the pay-as-you-go. So no, I don't think most realized that the city of Elko only did 20 cents, and the TV board picked up that 5 cents of the remaining 25. But so probably not.
And they are their own regulatory agency. They didn't have to ask anybody to do that?
Correct.
So there'll be some accountability, is what you're saying, and transparency, and where they're directing the additional, how much is being generated?
I don't have those numbers because we're just now talking to them, because it was actually kind of surprised to me. I didn't know that happened, because no, they don't report to us, just on the tax block, but I'm not sure the whole area of what it includes. So parts of Spring Creek, Elko, out to the rurals, but up like all the way to Wild Horse or Waihe or those, I do not think it does, but I have to see that line.
And of course,
so I don't have a clue but it should be substantial. If it does all of Spring Creek and Elko, that's your population base.
Right. So you are looking into it for us, and we'll
Correct.
report back. And again, nothing untoward is being suggested. It's just important to be accountable for that kind of public resource. For anybody listening, the Elko TV District has been in place, for decades, overseeing over-the-air television signals, and not sure how many people receive their signals over the air, but it is important to maintain some service for people who don't want to subscribe to a satellite or cable service.
We looked it up. Like 1958 was a county ordinance. I don't know
about then.
Something like that. So yeah, it's been a couple of years.
And if it is a good time to, thank you so much for catching that, Dor. Curtis, we could kind of fold you into the conversation. I mean, is this something you've been researching and you can help us out with some information? You're the assistant city manager, or county manager. I apologize. Yeah.
Sorry, not most of the information that we got involving just TV usage in the county mostly comes from a couple years ago when we looked at putting in an application to switch our media market for satellite television from Salt Lake City to Reno. And so we looked a little bit just at sort of how many users there are of each, mostly focusing on satellite and mostly in the very rural areas. So that's most of the information that we've got.
Do you recall it? I mean, I guess it would just be anecdotal at this point. Was it significant, or?
It's been a bit. There's still lots of folks that have rabbit ears out there just kind of as a backup or to get games and things that they might not have a streaming service for, but that are on some of the major networks. So it wasn't insignificant. I want to say around 25 or 30%, but I could just be misremembering from a few years ago.
Well, that's a healthy number, though. So again, folding numbers in going forward, looking at what TV District does with the money, with the increment, because as you said, you don't know, Curtis, do you, how much money they're looking at amassing from the increment? Or?
I don't off the top of my head, sorry.
That's okay. It's not on the agenda, by the way, so in all fairness, this just conversation kind of drifted in that direction, John. But it's a healthy conversation to have because it's a big pool of money, and taxpayers should know where it's going and what it's for.
Well, we're trying to look at I'm just going down my property bill and been working with the county and just kind of questioning all property tax of where it's being spent and is it being spent wisely is that sounds accusing towards something, and that's not what I'm applying. It's more of, are we working properly together to spend it wisely?
Yeah, and is it something that it's the same thing the city of Elko did when they did their park survey? They may be surprised by results when you ask people, is this something that the community cares about? Maybe we cared about it 20 years ago. Maybe we don't so much anymore. So,
correct.
Yeah, going forward. So that brings us to just the regular county commission meeting at 1:30 today. And we can start with you because we're going to get you out on time, gentlemen, today to so you can get there for the firefighter badge at the pinning ceremony for sure. There'll be an update from the Elko County Sheriff's Office. It's a non-action item. But Commissioner Karr, do you know of anything going on with the Sheriff's Department?
No, this is standard. He will fill us in on just how many arrests, anything that's going on, how full the jail is. Just keeps us informed on what they're up to.
I know one thing that you work on, you're diligent on this, is the capital planning for the county. And so depending on who we're talking to, sometimes an expansion of the jail as a behavioral health unit, that comes into the conversation?
It does. It won't probably in this one, but yes, that's. I was just talking to Amanda and Justin about that. The expansion that was designed years ago was still a lot of office space as opposed to a jail expansion. So that's why we're relooking at it, going, well, wait, what's really needed? Is the fentanyl, in my mind, is getting worse and not going to get better, but is it that factual? I don't know, but that's part of our problem right now. The jail itself is not necessarily 100% overcrowded, but the single cells for the people getting off the drugs that's taking longer is definitely part of the problem. So we are looking at that, but we haven't finalized anything yet.
So there's one other wing that could be, as you said, there's a footprint there, and it could be expanded. Something that Steve Burrows did say from Northeastern Nevada Regional Hospital. He reported Monday to Government Affairs that LifePoint did give the green light, so they are going to start construction here in the coming weeks on that third floor, the behavioral health at the hospital. So, I mean, that could take up some of the problem, I guess, shoulder some of the burden of inmates, or...
Hopefully, but I haven't been that involved on how extreme that mental health facility could handle. When are they
if it's
so
locked down
violent? Yeah,
okay.
Exactly. I don't know. I haven't talked to Steve that much, and I'm very close to the sheriff's office, but I'm not actually the liaison, so I haven't been on that part as well.
Oh, okay. Who's the liaison?
That'd be Rex on that one.
Oh, okay. So we'll check in maybe and see how that's he is on the budget committee, so I guess that makes sense.
Correct.
Yeah, and the sheriff's department is probably among the biggest expenditure in the budget, right?
Well, I think next year Rex and I will swap one of the two. I'll either be on the sheriff or the budget, but either way, yes, currently that's where it's at.
Okay. So that'll be an update there. And anything else before we get to the natural resources segment, which I know Curtis has quite a bit of information for us on, John?
No, we'll let Curtis take the reins. There
All
you
right.
go.
Sounds good. Thanks. Curtis Moore is our assistant county manager, and you've also been handling dual duties, right? Heading up the natural resources division.
Yeah. So we've got a few natural resource items today. The first one here, this G1, is a agreement between the city of Elko and Elko County. I'm sure that you and your listeners will remember about 13 or 14 years ago, we started the process of getting a section of land out there by the shooting range for a motorsports park. And that transfer took about a decade. And so it just, probably about 2019, 2020, we were able to finish that and then start developing it. And so Elko Motocross Club was the first group to bring us a proposal and get a track built out there. So they've been working on that, and they've got the city is generously offered to let them use water as part of their construction and dust control efforts out there. And so it's all built out, and they're still using city water for dust control for their events. And they finally got some sprinklers put in. And so that's sort of a long history of saying that the city's looking at putting in a new well out there. And so rather than having a bunch of short straws reaching in there for water to use for different things, it's more efficient to just have one straw, and kind of this agreement with the city that we can use the water for the development of that motorsports park, for the motocross club, and for other things that may come in there in the future.
So you're right. I remember you, I think, inheriting the project. You came on the radio and talked about it. And if you're not into motorsports, you may have forgotten about it, but this is actually really cool accomplishment, right, Curtis? I mean, it's a significant facility.
Yeah, the Motocross Club has put a ton of work into out there. They've been very successful in getting volunteers for equipment and for work and for operating, but also grants as well that have helped them purchase some equipment of their own to be able to take care and build those things and maintain them. And so it's becoming a really neat facility, and they've had a few smaller events out there. And so hopefully as this gets farther and as this project gets farther, they'll be able to hold bigger and bigger events out there.
Yeah, that's cool. It does not replace, it's not the raceway, it's not Summit Raceway, correct?
Right, it's the motocross.
Right, so it's motocross, and it does accommodate adult and youth sports.
Yeah, they've got sort of several different, I'm not super familiar with their day-to-day operations, but I know that they've got several different age groups that sort of range from the smaller kids on kind of a smaller track to adults that do it.
And it's about, I guess, how would you describe it in the vicinity of Elko? It's just outside city limits?
Yeah, it's just off the exit where the Sinclair is, just outside of city limits by the Komatsu plant.
Oh, cool. Very cool. And that's where the Exit 298 lift station and expanded city water services are going. So could see a lot more cool stuff happening out there. And we know that the Boys and Girls Clubs are narrowing down their site decision for the event center. Could be east, could be west. John, are you willing to give up any on that? Or?
I don't have.
They know better than to tell you anything, is what you're telling me.
That's once again, Rex was on that board working with them. I'm close to Rusty. We talk all the time, but no, I haven't been involved in that exactly. And they're supposed to be presenting to the city here soon about where it's supposed to go.
I know. We're excited. So Rusty will come on. I'm sure he will, because they're very excited. They have not abandoned the event center whatsoever. They're just looking at this big new project and parcel where they won't be landlocked, and they can have all kinds of amazing attributes. So cool.
I don't think it's out by the motocross park is on but the area over there is, I think.
Was considered. I don't know what the considerations are. I think there were 2 sites that they had narrowed it down to. So we'll wait for the drum roll like everybody else. All right. Thanks, John, and thanks, Curtis. So that's cool news. And the Summit the Elko County Motorsports Park is open to the public, I guess, or if you're a club member.
Yeah. So the club itself sort of administers that part of the motorsports park. And so it's mostly open to their members during their events and things like that. So I know they have practices and races and other things that.
Neat. We'll have to look for it. Well, I'll find out from you who are these guys. Let's have them come on the radio and talk about it. That sounds really cool. So moving on, you also have an update. The county is being asked to maybe comment on the Gold Rush Mine project and possible environmental impacts.
Yeah, so the environmental impact statement for the Gold Rush Mine project was released at the end of October. This is, the county was a cooperating agency on this project, and so that allows the county to be involved early on in the process to submit data that we think should be considered during this process, and to sort of be there while they're drafting different parts of it. In the past, the socioeconomic impacts is part of an EIS, and those were sort of given short shrift for a long time. But in the last few years, with the Nevada Economic Assessment Project through the UNR and BLM, that's a joint project between those 2 agencies, they've actually been able to make that a much more robust section and actually take a look at what some of those are going to be. And so that's part of Elko County's job in these cooperating agency meetings, is to sit in and make sure that, they're using the most updated baseline reports from the NEEP project, and that they're considering all these things. And so my comments on these have gotten a little bit shorter since they've gotten better at the socioeconomic part of this, because I used to sort of spend a lot of time outlining how many of these jobs are out at the mine site and how many of these workers work in Elko County, live in Elko County. This mine in particular is on the border of Eureka and Lander counties. So there's not a huge population there. So most of their workers live in Elko County, and so just sort of outlining that. But the NEAT project has made it a lot easier because they just kind of incorporate that information into the EIS.
So a couple things come to mind. Well, first of all, thank you, Curtis. Thank goodness we have a representative now to present or to be on hand for that. So you would think that tax distribution, I mean, I guess that's not the purview of the federal agency, but because we're outside of the tax impact, right? We don't get a share of the taxes.
Yeah, that's not a huge part of the federal analysis that goes into it. It's mostly looking at, number of workers, housing availability, impacts on local systems and that sort of thing. So, not a ton of tax analysis in there, but there is a lot, like I said, just sort of going over number of jobs, the longevity of jobs. This this project is expected to extend the mine life by about 24 years, and so the number of jobs, the longevity of those jobs, the pay of those jobs, and how it compares with other parts of the state and that sort of thing.
So obviously the tax increment and the distribution and the formula, the net proceeds in mind, that doesn't come into the conversation, but it is a concern to Elko County, right, Curtis? Because we need to know how we pay for all the services associated with all the new employees, right? Or the additional employees?
It does come up because, this is where the people live and where they get services and stuff. And so that ends up being sort of more a state level discussion that we regularly have with our legislators and the mines and that sort of thing. So they've been good community partners and have made up for it in different ways. Yeah,
they definitely talked about that too. I was at the Nevada Gold Mines quarterly breakfast or meeting, I guess they had and then recently. And then the other issue, I guess, environmental, which may have been discussed, is water. We're hearing more about water, obviously. So was that brought up during the?
There's the EIS itself has a lot of water modeling, and because of dewatering, there's a lot of sort of in-depth charts that talk about the impact of the water table and things like that. Mm-hmm. Those are all sort of, it's outside of Elko County, so it's not something that I look at as closely as the socioeconomic part of it. But if anybody's interested, that's very much in there.
And does Eureka County have a Curtis Moore, someone who can look at that for them?
Yeah, Eureka County, they have Jake Tibbetts, who's their natural resource guy, and he's very knowledgeable and spends a lot of time looking at that stuff and commenting on it. So I think they're in pretty good hands. Oh, good. That's really healthy. I know I was at the Nevada 9580 Futures Forum that they had in Humboldt County just, a month or so ago. And Buddy Borden was there from UNR, from Cooperative Extension. And you're nodding because I was looking for his statistics. He said that just in that area of the Humboldt-Pershing counties economic sphere, if you will, just in the initial construction phase to keep up with the growth of lithium, expanded gold mining, there is going to be a $4 billion investment anywhere between the next 4 to 7 years in that region. Does that sound surprising? Not terribly. There's a lot of mineral wealth in that area, and so managing it and making sure it's extracted responsibly is a big industry. Yeah, and you know what their biggest issue is, right? Housing. They don't have places to put people. Yeah, and that comes up a little bit in the EIS when they talk about occupancy rates and things like that. So I guess during this afternoon's county meeting, Curtis, the issue will be for the commissioners to either approve or, did you draft a letter in support of the project? Or I have a letter mostly drafted, and so it'll just be like a bit essentially what I just told you, talking about the socioeconomic impacts and seeing if the commissioners have anything else on the top of their brains that they would like to include in a letter, and then drafting it and sending it off. All right. Anything on the top of your brain, John Karr, our commissioner, what you would include in the letter?
I don't think it's appropriate to write in this letter, but I always throw out a punchline of if they're not mining in Elko County or somewhere that has legitimate environmental engineers checking for the environment, you end up with stuff down in South America, rainforest, all those kind of lovely places that become anything goes. So I always try to throw that out there, that these environmentalists that they don't know what they're talking about. This is the best place and most secure place in the world to be mining.
It is definitely arid. It's not a rainforest. So, yeah, there's just other...
Water's the hardest thing to control.
Exactly.
For any kind of environmental problem, any kind of pollution problem. And so this is really the best place to be doing stuff.
And I guess if we're moving along, just in the interest of time, I want to make sure the other thing that pops out on the agenda is enhanced 911 and a report on the surcharge. Right, John?
Well, that was all what we were talking about earlier, just how bad the dispatch really was over for years and years of neglect. So this is just part of that overall infrastructure we've been looking at.
And briefing on the surcharge. Anything you wanted to add on that, Curtis? Or no,
Nothing
you're
from my
good.
end.
All right, you've got your segment covered there under natural resources. I wanted to make sure you had a chance, John, too, before we close. I didn't mean to. I forgot to ask about this at the top. Any comments on Veterans Day, the parade, or any? The parade went off beautifully, by the way, Saturday. I was there for that and able to help judge. And I just wanted to make sure, I've been telling people that the county, it's not a function of county government per se, right? And I want to make sure that I was correct in that interpretation, that nobody should have been pointing fingers at county staff per se for what happened initially, because...
No, I think that's a fair assessment because what really happened was it became the they thing, and you know my opinion on the they. There's nobody actually named they, but everybody seems to. Oh yeah, they are working on it. Well, that's what happened. They are working on it, but then they didn't volunteer to actually work on it, so there was no they actually running it. So anyway, that was kind of why the county went, well, I guess there's no support here. There's no enthusiasm for it. Why are we doing it? Because we were just volunteering to keep it going years ago anyway. Is the only reason we actually donated, because the city had implemented that fee. And so the county was just being nice and, hey, we'll pick up the fee and help you guys continue the parade. We never intended that the county's all of a sudden the go-getter and we're the ones planning, doing everything else. And so it kind of became, once again, the they complex. But I think we've got to figure out now who we're working with, and it'll keep going.
Yeah, there was an amazing turnout for that. And so just wanted to make sure people understood that it wasn't obviously intentional, literally slipped through the cracks. But now we know how important. And we really, I think we're able to boost up veterans as a result and hopefully make them feel even better knowing that effort was pulled off in just a few days, literally.
And it sure the heck was never about a money thing, and it sure the heck was never about we don't care about our veterans. None of that. If anybody even believes remotely that was true, no, that was not the case at all.
Yeah, it wasn't a city or a county, because I saw people pointing fingers in all kinds of directions. It was like what did they call that, standoff with everybody pointing in the circle. And yeah, so
right.
Yeah, so good to know. And again, just amazing support and organization. Josephine Mahoney, a young woman who just apparently works at the Stockmans, and she spoke at your meeting, and she kind of spearheaded the thing and got everybody back on track. So.
Oh, way to, that comment of put your money where your mouth is. No, she did. She went, oh, no, we're going to do this. And she made it happen. She was a huge part.
And she was very kind, too.
Oh, yeah.
She never had a bad thing to say about anybody or anything. So I think that's important. And we can all learn a lesson from that, right?
Huge kudos to her. She was very professional about it and made it happen. So, good for her.
Yeah. So if you're listening, Dave Zorns, and you hired Josephine, that was an excellent move on behalf of all of us in the county. We appreciate it. We could certainly use more citizens like Josephine Mahoney. So
there you go.
Nice. So anything else before we sign off today and send you downtown? John, I sure appreciate your coming in. And I know you've always got stuff you're working on. You're working on...
kind of mellow since the Ruby View is closed for the winter, the restaurant up there. So that part has been taken off my plate for at least 4 or 5 months.
I heard it was a great season. Congratulations.
No, I'm very happy with working with the city on how it's working out. The place has been neglected in my mind, but we're putting money back into it, so it's getting there.
You'll plant some more flowers, and it'll come back around.
And I just got to get my employees to water them this year so we don't have them dying off. But, oh, well, yes. No, it was very good, and I'm glad we did it. I sure don't make any money. It's more of a hobby, but I sure enjoy it, so what the heck.
Well, thanks. It adds to the beautiful amenity, Ruby View, the city's golf course. And at the same time, you're handling things out at the county for Spring Creek Association, too, at the club out there. So
yeah, I unfortunately just agreed to that last week at their association meeting, so... that's another hobby. But no, I enjoy it. Jesse and the whole group was very good to me out there, and I have great staff out there. So I don't spend enough time myself personally out there to be a really effective owner, but overall, no.
Thank you, John. And till we meet again, I appreciate your coming on the show.
Of course.
And Curtis, thank you so much. We appreciate your coming in today, and go and have a great meeting. Is there anything I didn't ask you about that you wanted to relate?
Covered it.
Okay, I hope so. Hope we got to all the issues today. Have a great meeting, gentlemen. Thanks again for being on the radio here on Elko Live on KELK. Thank you, listeners, for joining us for today's program. If you want to be on hand for the badge pinning, that starts at 1:15, so skedaddle downtown. The county meeting starts at 1:30 today. Thank you.